The first 20 hours, how to learn anything quickly. Hi, I'm Teacher Luke, and welcome to this story on how to learn anything quickly. Chapter 1. Why talent is overrated. Let me start with a question for you. Do you believe that some people are simply born talented? Maybe you've thought, I could never learn to play the guitar, I'm just not musical. Or, languages aren't for me, I don't have the talent. Have you ever said something like that to yourself? If you have, you're not alone. Many people believe that talent is the key to learning. But in this chapter, I want to show you why talent is not the most important thing. In fact, talent is often overrated. What really matters is something that anyone can use: focused practice and the right method. If you agree or disagree, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Write your answer in the comments after listening. For centuries, people have admired great musicians, athletes, scientists, and writers, and said they must have been born with a gift. We imagine Mozart as a child genius who sat down at the piano and played perfectly. We think of Serena Williams holding a tennis racket at the age of 3 and already playing like a champion. These stories are powerful, but they are also misleading. The truth is, behind every success, there are thousands of hours of practice, mistakes, and learning. Mozart, for example, had a father who was a music teacher. From a very young age, he practiced constantly. Serena Williams trained almost every day of her childhood, guided by a coach and by her parents. What looks like natural talent is often the result of long, focused training. Let me tell you a story from my own life. When I was about 15 years old, I really wanted to play the guitar. My friends at school had bands, and they looked so cool playing music together. I wanted to join in. But when I first picked up the guitar, I was terrible. My fingers hurt, the strings buzzed, and I couldn't change chords fast enough. I remember thinking, maybe I'm just not musical. Maybe I don't have the talent. For a while, I almost gave up. But then, one summer, I decided to practice every single day for 20 minutes. Nothing extreme, just a short time each day. I practiced changing between 2 simple chords over and over again. At first, it was frustrating. My fingers slipped, and the sound was ugly. But after a few weeks, something happened. My fingers started to remember the shapes. The buzzing sound was gone. I could change chords without stopping. Soon, I was able to play a full song. That moment gave me so much confidence. Looking back, I can see that talent was not the problem. The problem was that I expected to be good without practicing. Once I practiced consistently, even for a short time, I improved quickly. Now, years later, I still play guitar, and I can honestly say it has brought me joy in life. And it all started with those first hours of simple practice. The idea of talent can actually be dangerous. Why? Because it stops people from trying. If you believe you cannot learn something because you don't have a gift, you won't even begin. Or you will quit too soon. Think about language learning. I often hear students say, I'm bad at languages. But what does that really mean? Usually, it means they had a bad experience at school, or they tried for a short time and gave up. It doesn't mean they cannot learn. It just means they need a better method and more practice. The danger is that the myth of talent becomes an excuse. It feels comfortable to say, I'm not talented, so I won't even try. But the truth is, learning is not about being gifted. It is about being persistent. So if talent is not the secret, what is? Practice. And not just any practice. Focused, deliberate practice. Deliberate practice means you don't just repeat things mindlessly. Instead, you focus on the part that is difficult and you give your full attention. For example, when I practiced guitar, I didn't just strum random chords. I practiced the exact transition that was difficult again and again until it became easier. The same is true for languages. If pronunciation is hard, practice saying the same sound 20 times, slowly and carefully. If listening is difficult, listen to the same short clip every day until your ear begins to recognize the words. The point is, improvement comes from focused effort, not from natural talent. Another reason talent seems important is because we look at the whole skill and feel overwhelmed. Imagine you watch someone play a complex piano piece. You think, I could never do that. But what you don't see is that they learned one hand first, then the other hand, then slowly combined them piece by piece. This is the secret. Break the skill into smaller parts. If you want to learn to cook, don't start with a 5-course dinner. Start with boiling pasta or frying an egg. If you want to learn to paint, don't begin with a huge canvas. Start with drawing a simple object. Small steps make learning possible. When you take small steps, you don't need talent. You just need the patience to practice the steps until they feel easier. Research in psychology also supports this idea. Studies show that our brains change when we practice. Neural connections become stronger, like paths in a forest becoming clearer when people walk on them again and again. This process is called neuroplasticity. It doesn't depend on talent. It depends on repetition and attention. That means your brain is like a muscle. The more you use it in a certain way, the stronger it becomes. Just like lifting weights builds muscle in your arms, practicing a skill builds strength in your brain. Of course, the early stage of learning is always the hardest. This is when people say, I can't do it, I don't have the talent, but what they really mean is, this feels uncomfortable and I don't like making mistakes. Here's the truth. Mistakes are not a sign of failure. They are a sign that you are learning. Every wrong note on the guitar, every mistake in pronunciation, every burnt pancake in the kitchen, these are steps on the road to improvement. If you expect the early stage to feel easy, you will quit. But if you accept that it will be frustrating and you push through, you will discover that learning gets easier. So let me say this clearly. You do not need to be special to learn something new. You do not need to be born with a gift. What you need is the willingness to practice, the patience to repeat small steps, and the courage to make mistakes. Think about one thing you want to learn. Maybe it's speaking English more fluently, cooking a new dish, or learning to dance. Imagine what could happen if you gave yourself just 20 hours of focused practice. That's less than 1 hour a day for a month. You would be surprised at how much progress you can make. Before we move to the next chapter, let me ask you, what is one skill you always believed you couldn't learn because you thought you had no talent? Write it in the comments. I'd love to see your answers. Remember this, talent is not the reason people succeed. Practice, persistence, and method are the real keys. Once you understand that, a new world opens up. A world where you can learn anything you choose. Chapter 2. The 20-Hour Rule. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever wanted to learn a new skill, but then stopped because you thought it would take too long? Maybe you thought, it takes years to learn a language, or I don't have time to learn an instrument. Have you ever felt that way? If you have, you're not alone. Many people believe learning something new requires thousands of hours. But in this chapter, I want to share an idea that can change how you think about learning forever. It's called the 20-Hour Rule. Write in the comments if you've ever quit something because you thought it would take too long. You may have heard of the 10,000-hour rule. This idea became popular because of research by a psychologist named Anders Ericsson, and later through books like Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. The idea is simple. To become a world-class expert in a skill, you need about 10,000 hours of practice. And that's true. If your goal is to become the best in the world, you'll need thousands of hours. Think of professional musicians, Olympic athletes, or chess masters. They have spent years, sometimes decades, practicing for hours every day. But here's the problem. Most of us don't want to be world-class experts. We just want to be good enough. We want to play guitar around the campfire, have a conversation in Spanish while traveling, or cook a delicious meal for our friends. For those goals, 10,000 hours is far more than we need. Josh Kaufman, an author and researcher, looked closely at this problem. He realized that the first hours of practice are the most powerful. You don't need thousands of hours to learn the basics of a new skill. You can get surprisingly good in just 20 hours. Think about that. 20 hours. That's less than 1 hour a day for a month. The 20-hour rule means that if you practice with focus and the right method, you can go from zero to a useful level of skill very quickly. You won't be perfect, but you'll be good enough to enjoy the skill and use it in real life. Let me share a personal story. A few years ago, I went on holiday to Spain. I had studied Spanish a little at school, but I had forgotten almost everything. I wanted to speak with locals, order food, and understand simple conversations. But with only 3 months before my trip, I thought, it's impossible. I'll never have enough time. Then I remembered the 20-hour rule. I decided to test it. For 1 month, I practiced Spanish for 30 minutes every evening. I didn't use a huge grammar book. Instead, I focused on the most common phrases and words. I practiced speaking aloud, even when I was alone. I listened to short audio clips and repeated them many times. At first, it was difficult and sometimes embarrassing. But after about 10 hours, something amazing happened. I could understand simple questions and answer them. After 20 hours, I could order in restaurants, ask for directions, and even have short conversations with friendly people. Of course, I was not fluent, but I had enough Spanish to enjoy my trip, connect with people, and feel proud of myself. That was the power of 20 hours. The reason the 20-hour rule works is simple. When you begin a new skill, you learn the fastest. In the beginning, you know nothing. Every hour of practice gives you huge progress. Later, as you reach higher levels, progress becomes slower and more detailed. But those first hours are full of excitement and rapid improvement. Imagine learning to type on a keyboard. At first, you're hunting for each letter. After a few hours, you can type words without looking down. After 20 hours, you're comfortable writing emails and essays. Do you need 10,000 hours to be the best typist in the world? You just need 20 hours to be good enough. So, how can you use the 20-hour rule in your own life? Let me give you a simple 4-step process. Choose a skill that excites you. Pick something you really want to learn. Motivation is easier if you care about the skill. Break the skill into smaller parts. Don't try to learn everything at once. Focus on the most useful parts first. For language learning, that means common phrases. For guitar, it's a few basic chords. For cooking, it's a handful of essential recipes. Remove barriers, make it easy to practice. Keep your guitar in the living room, not in the case. Put your Spanish app on your phone's home screen. Prepare ingredients before cooking. Remove distractions, like turning off your phone notifications. Practice at least 20 minutes a day. Short, focused practice is better than long, unfocused sessions. If you practice for 20 minutes a day, after 2 months, you will have your 20 hours. Learning to cook. Imagine you want to cook Italian food. Spend 20 hours practicing just 3 recipes: pasta, pizza dough, and tiramisu. By the end, you'll have 3 delicious meals you can prepare for friends. Learning photography? Spend 20 hours practicing with just 1 camera setting, maybe the aperture setting. After those hours, you'll understand how light works, and your photos will look far more professional. Learning a sport. If you want to learn tennis, don't start with every possible move. Spend 20 hours practicing your serve and 1 type of shot. By the end, you'll be confident enough to play a real game. Now, here's the challenge. 20 hours sounds small, but it's still a real commitment. Many people give up after 2 or 3 hours because it feels uncomfortable. They say, I'm no good at this. But the trick is to push past the early frustration. If you commit to 20 hours, you will see results. You don't need talent, and you don't need thousands of hours. You just need to make a promise to yourself. I will give this skill 20 hours before I decide to quit. Once you try the 20-hour rule, your view of learning changes. Instead of thinking it will take forever, you think, I can do this in 1 month. That is powerful. It gives you confidence to start. And starting is often the hardest part. Think about it. How many things have you wanted to learn but never even began? Maybe you wanted to try painting, or speaking another language, or playing chess. What if you gave yourself just 20 hours? What could you achieve? Another quick story from my life. For years, I was nervous about public speaking. Standing in front of people made me feel uncomfortable. But I wanted to improve. Because I was teaching and giving presentations, I decided to apply the 20-hour rule. For 1 month, I practiced short talks every day. I recorded myself on my phone, listened back, and tried again. At first, I hated hearing my own voice, but slowly I improved. My sentences became clearer and I felt more confident. After 20 hours, I was not a professional speaker, but I was no longer afraid. I could stand in front of a group and give a lesson without panic. That was life-changing. Here's what I want you to remember. You don't need to be the best in the world. You don't need 10,000 hours. You just need 20 focused hours to go from nothing to something. That's the power of the 20-hour rule. So let me ask you, what is one skill you would love to try if you knew you could make real progress in just 20 hours? Would it be cooking, dancing, playing music, or learning a language? Write your answer in the comments. I'd love to see what you want to learn. And who knows, maybe by the end of this month, you could already be on your way. Remember this, the first 20 hours are the most important. If you give yourself that time, you'll be amazed at how quickly you can learn anything. Chapter 3, From Practice to Habit. Let me start with a question for you. Have you ever started learning something new? Maybe a language, a sport, or an instrument, and felt really excited at first. But then, after a week or two, your motivation disappeared and you stopped. Why do you think that happens? Write your answer in the comments. This is what Chapter 3 is about. It's not just about starting strong, but about continuing. Because the real magic of learning happens when practice becomes a habit. When you begin a new skill, you feel excited. You imagine yourself speaking a new language, cooking amazing meals, or playing guitar at a party. The vision of success gives you energy, but motivation is like fuel in a car. It burns quickly. After a few days or weeks, you no longer feel that same excitement. The practice starts to feel repetitive. Progress feels slower, and this is the moment when most people quit. Here's the good news. This is normal. There's nothing wrong with you if your motivation drops. Everyone feels this way. The key is to build a system that carries you forward, even when you don't feel motivated. That system is called habit. A habit is something you do automatically without needing to think too much. Think about brushing your teeth. Do you need motivation every night to brush your teeth? Number. You just do it because it has become part of your routine. If you can turn your learning practice into a habit, you don't have to fight with yourself every day. You don't have to think, should I practice or not? Instead, practice becomes as natural as making coffee in the morning. Let me tell you a story from my own life. When I was trying to improve my French, I often felt lazy after a long day. I told myself, I'll study tomorrow. But tomorrow became next week, and I lost my rhythm. Then I made a simple change. I connected my French practice to something I already did every day, drinking tea in the morning. I told myself, When I make tea, I'll listen to 5 minutes of French audio. That was it. Just 5 minutes, nothing big. At first, it felt small, almost too small, but because I repeated it every morning, it became automatic. Tea meant French. Some mornings I only did 5 minutes. Other mornings I continued for 20 or 30 minutes. But the important thing was, I didn't stop. That small daily habit kept me moving forward. Attach practice to something you already do. Choose a daily activity, drinking coffee, commuting, brushing your teeth, and connect your practice to it. For example, after brushing my teeth, I'll write one sentence in English. Make it very small. Start with a tiny step, maybe just 5 minutes a day. If you make the habit too big, you'll resist. But if it's small, you'll think, of course I can do that. Once you start, you'll often do more. Celebrate small wins. After each practice, give yourself a little reward. Smile, check a box on a calendar, or tell yourself, well done. These small celebrations tell your brain, this feels good, let's do it again tomorrow. Many learners make the mistake of practicing a lot in one day, then stopping for weeks. They study for 3 hours on Sunday, but then nothing on Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. This kind of practice doesn't last. Consistency is far more powerful. 10 minutes every day is better than 3 hours once a week. Why? Because your brain needs repetition to build connections. Short, regular practice strengthens those connections much faster than long, irregular sessions. Think of exercise. If you go to the gym for one day and lift weights for 6 hours, you won't become strong. But if you lift weights for 20 minutes every day, you'll see results quickly. The same is true for learning. Another secret to building habits is to design your environment. Make practice easy to start and make distraction hard. If you want to play guitar, keep the guitar on a stand in the living room, not hidden in the case. If you want to learn a language, keep your textbook on your desk, not on a high shelf. If you want to write, keep a notebook open on the table, ready for your next sentence. At the same time, reduce distractions. Put your phone in another room or use an app that blocks social media during practice. The less energy you spend fighting distractions, the easier it is to keep your habit. Another way to keep your habit strong is to track your progress. Humans love to see visible results. One simple method is the chain method. Draw a calendar on a piece of paper. Every day you practice, put a big X on that day. Soon, you'll see a chain of X's. Your goal becomes simple. Don't break the chain. This visual reminder is powerful. It shows you that you're moving forward, even if progress feels slow. I used this method when I was practicing public speaking. Every day, I recorded a short talk on my phone. After speaking, I put an X on my calendar. At first, the X's felt small, but after 2 weeks, I looked at my calendar and thought, wow, I've practiced 14 days in a row. That gave me pride and motivation to continue. When I reached 30 days, I didn't want to break the chain. The habit became strong. Even when I was tired, I thought, just do it once today. Keep the chain alive. And it worked. It's also important to remember that learning is not just technical, it's emotional. Sometimes you'll feel bored. Sometimes you'll feel frustrated. Sometimes you'll feel like you're not making progress. But emotions are temporary. Habits protect you from those ups and downs. When learning is a habit, you practice even when you don't feel like it. And after the practice, you often feel better. Think about exercise again. How many times have you said, I don't want to go for a run, but after running, you felt great? Learning works the same way. So here's the key lesson. Motivation will not always be there, but habits can carry you through. If you attach practice to your daily life, make it small, track your progress, and reduce distractions, you will continue learning long after the excitement has faded. And remember, you don't need to be perfect. Even 10 minutes a day can change your life if you keep going. So, let me ask you, what is one small habit you could create today to practice a skill you want to learn? Could you read one English sentence every morning? Could you practice guitar while your tea is boiling? Could you write a short journal entry before bed? Write your answer in the comments. I'd love to hear your ideas. And remember, learning begins with the first 20 hours, but it continues when practice becomes a habit. If you can make your learning automatic, you can keep growing, not just for weeks, but for a lifetime.